Hello, hello. Thank you for joining us. We are doing a lunch and learn this Tuesday, and my guest is Aimee. Aimee is going to share with us the ins and outs of college for first generation college students and also their families because it's it's not just the student going to college who has the experience, it's an experience for an entire family. And the experience starts in high school. Before we speak with Aimee, I want to let everybody know that if you have questions or comments, just put them in the comment section and we'll address them live. We are talking on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you're having lunch with us now, please feel free to dialogue with us and Aimee will address your comments live. And who is Aimee? Aimee is the Assistant Vice President for Enrollment at Gwynedd Mercer University. And one of the things that she does is she works with first-gen families. And first-gen families aren't just the families who are, aren't the only ones who are new to school, right? Their families are new to school. It's an experience for the whole family. And she knows this from personal and professional experience. She's going to share both with us. Hello, Aimee.
Hi, Kamara. Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm so excited to be able to talk about this really important topic.
Thank you. We're excited to have you. We have a lot of questions that come from our parent groups, and one of the things that people are discussing is if they don't have college experience, how do they help their students in this process? And I have seen more and more that there are groups and affinity groups in YouTube. I told you when we were pre-gaming that I saw a YouTube tour of a college that was done by 3 first-gen students from different aspects of society. And they gave a tour of their college from their perspective and said what first-gen students need to know. So I'm really glad that we're having this conversation and that more people are having it.
Yeah. And, you and I talked about this a little bit before. We didn't know. So when I went to school, I was a first generation college student. My parents didn't graduate from college. And I didn't know that it had a name. I didn't know that I was a part of an affinity group. It would have been so cool to know that when I was going to school. But realistically, first generation students are students whose parents have not received a degree. So oftentimes it's students whose families have not received a bachelor's degree. Maybe they did some college, but didn't finish out. Or for those families who's didn't go to college, or a sibling is the first person to go to college, maybe perhaps their parents didn't go, or their support group is somebody else. It's somebody other than, potentially their parents pursuing that initial degree. And for first generation students and their families, exactly as you said, this is a journey that we all take together. So it can feel very overwhelming. There is a lot of stuff that we talk about in enrollment management and higher education that feels very foreign, language that we use that is a little bit complex, words that we use that don't make sense. Like I often tell families, I know you understand this vocabulary, but maybe not in this context, right? So working with first generation students, because that is my background, has just been so awesome. I've been incredibly lucky. I am one of 6 siblings. And so, going through the college process with even my youngest brother most recently has just been so incredible, to be able to see it again from the consumer side, and not just from the enrollment side of Recruiter.
Oh, I'm going to ask you more about that in your experience. But I also wanted to point out that this conversation is not just for the families of first-gen students. It's for everybody, because the more that the broader community understands different perspectives, the easier it is for us to be together in one place. And college is a community. And I know from experience that first-gen parents have questions that multi-gen parents may not realize is unknown. And you can really help when you understand that some of this stuff is new for everybody, and that we must approach their questions with sensitivity and understanding instead of dismissing it as everybody knows that.
Absolutely. I tell students and families all the time, you never have to apologize for an email. You never have to say, this is going to be a dumb question, but it's
Mhm.
not. There aren't any. I walk in assuming that every family that I meet with knows nothing about the process. Because as you mentioned, even those families who are legacy families, for example, whose parents maybe went to college, there has been a lot of changes probably between when they went to college and when you're going to college. So I really work through, and our team works really to make sure that we have a common language with everybody. And some families may say, yep, I already knew that. You sort of check the box on that. But we want to make
Mhm.
sure that we are explaining vocabulary across the board, just making sure that everybody totally understands what we are talking about, regardless of whether you're first generation or your parents went to college and it was many years ago.
Yeah, or if your kids are far apart, your last experience probably is not the same as the current one.
Exactly.
Why don't you tell us some about your experience as a first gen student? Then we'll get into your work with them.
Yeah. So I was very lucky to have incredibly supportive parents who, even though they weren't 100% sure what we were all doing, they knew that this was the thing that I wanted to do, and we were going to
Mhm.
work to make it happen. So I was incredibly lucky to have two very supportive parents. I also had a village around me. So when I went to college, I ended up being able to find a fantastic mentor who kind of helped me move through. And again, once I went into a professional world, I realized your advocate can be anybody. Your advocate can be your parent, can be your grandparent, could be your aunt, could be your principal, your professional school counselor, whoever, your next door neighbor. There are so many people who are pulling for you to go to college. And I never, until I was able to really reflect on it, I really kind of sat back and said, "Oh my gosh, my parents were amazing and they supported me, and we slept through the FAFSA together," and things like that. Um, but holy cow, I had a lot of people behind me, encouraging me to succeed and supporting me in my success. So, what I never want a first generation student to feel is alone. There are so many people that are going to be around you, can be supporting you. Those people should include an admissions counselor for a college that you're looking at. Perhaps it includes your professional school counselor or your sibling or somebody else who's helping you move through the process. But you are supported. And that is one thing that I always felt. And I want to make sure that any student who is coming through the process, first generation student, legacy student, whatever, that you feel supported in this process, because it is really overwhelming. There's a lot that goes into not necessarily being accepted to college, but going to college, being prepared for college. There's a lot that goes into that. And so we want to make sure that students feel really, really good about the decision that they're making, and where they're planning to be for the next 4 years of their life.
Mhm. So, what are the types of things that first gen students and families need to know about preparedness, about the process of applying to college, and then about college life?
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, the first thing is that literally an admissions counselor exists at every single institution. We might have a different name. We might be called a recruiter. You might be called a counselor, whatever the case is. But there is someone to help you through this process at every single institution that you are looking at, as a family, as a student. So your professional school counselor is going to be an amazing contact for you, a great networking tool. Take advantage of those opportunities at your high school when your prospective institution comes and visits, so that you can say hello and learn a little bit more and get the business card of that person, right? Um, I tell students all the time, I know you're going to lose my business card, so just go ahead and take a picture of it on your phone now, so that we that we can stay in touch. They're hard, they're little, they're hard to keep track of. Um, but we can do our best to make this process seamless. What I never want to say is it's going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. You're going to find bumps in the road. There are going to be certain challenges, and the challenges are going to be different for everyone. But there are ways that we can smooth the edges out a little bit. So as you're applying for colleges, be thinking about, is there a college that has a fee waiver? How much is the cost of your application? Most colleges have an application fee. They may have an application fee waiver. They may have no fee. So asking about that, right? Why spend the money if you don't have to? So get a waiver, get a fee waiver. Some colleges do it at special times of the year. So maybe it's a free application week or free application month, and those are specific times that you can do it. Maybe there's an instant decision day at your school, and the counselor is going to come and evaluate your application there, and they're going to waive your fee. So as you think about those processes, think about ways that, again, you can sort of streamline. A lot of different colleges have multiple applications. So they might have their application on their school website. A lot of people have heard of the common application. There are lots of common applications. So HBCUs, for example, have a common application. There is a common application called the common application. So there are ways for students to really kind of knock out a couple of applications by hitting submit once. So, again, take advantage of those opportunities to streamline that process. And then, depending on the needs of the institution, just again, make sure that you keep track. Another tip that I always give students, and this is just something for you to think about, families and students, create an email account that is just for colleges. So Aimee Huffstetler College at gmail.com. And that's what you put on all of your college stuff so that you don't have to navigate colleges, the emails, the important emails that are coming in from different colleges as you're trying to track your Amazon package. That's what I always say. You don't want that Amazon package to get buried. So if you have a dedicated college email, that is an amazing opportunity for you not to miss out on anything and for you to stay a little bit organized, because again, we send you a lot of emails. We're reminding you about things. We're inviting you to things. So we want you to stay involved and engaged, but we don't want any of our emails or anything like that to get lost in the sauce. So that's a good way to keep it organized.
I love that. And just to remind people, HBCU stands for Historically Black Colleges and Universities. And there is a separate common application for those if you wish to utilize it. Now, we talked in the pregame that there are a lot of myths and just bad information out in various communities. And a lot of first-gen families just don't know how to sort through it. They don't know which is true from fact, which is fact and which is fiction, because they haven't had the experience. For example, you said feel free to utilize the enrollment or admissions officers. I know that one of the myths is that you're penalized for that if you reach out too much or have too many questions or seem like you don't know. So tell us if that's true, and let us know some of the other common myths that you hear.
Gosh, you're definitely not penalized. If anything, I've seen it work in the benefit of students. Your engagement with an institution shows your interest. So we want to hear from you. We want to see you all the time. We want to see you at every event on campus. And we say, oh, hey, Kamara, nice to see you again. We're so glad you're back. So yes, engage with your counselor. Another myth that I hear often is, about writing essays. So we want to encourage students to be thoughtful about writing their essays, that you shouldn't be too personal in essays. I hear that on a regular basis. We use your essay to learn more about you. If you're not personal, then we don't get to learn what we might want to learn about you. So use that essay in a way that makes sense for you. You don't need to divulge everything that you think. If you don't feel that it's appropriate, that is absolutely fine. You don't have to do that. But visit campus. That's always another big one. I don't have to visit campus. The online pictures look fine and I'll know what I want. There is a vibe that comes from every campus. I mean, I think it's safe to say as you're visiting campuses, you will recognize, okay, I could see myself living here. I could see myself being in class here. I could see myself being taught by this particular professor. You can't get that from a picture. So I always encourage students, get on the campus, get on the grounds. Another myth that I always hear is around residence halls. Everyone is very nervous. Pitch Perfect came out, and like everyone is very nervous about community residence halls. I went to a school with a community residence hall. I actually liked the opportunity to meet people, and it's kind of funny to talk to people over, brushing your teeth, right? You're
Mhm.
getting ready for the day. These are the people that you're going to see all day, and so being able to be in a clean area and supportive area, just in a more organic type of way. I love the community style bathroom, so that's personal for me. But yeah, I mean, those are just a couple of them, but we're always here to support you, admissions counselors. Another myth that I hear pretty regularly is an admissions counselor won't talk to you about another school. They'll only tell you things that have to do with their school. That hasn't been my experience. I find that most admissions counselors, especially administrators, are trying to create good consumers of higher education. We want to make
Mhm.
sure that students find what they need, they find the home for them. We want to see if we can provide that for you. So if it makes sense, if your major matches, if all of that works out, then I would say, please come and look at Gwen and Mercy. I want to see you on campus and see how you feel. But if your major is engineering, we don't have that as a program. So
Mhm.
I may redirect you and say, but XYZ college does have that. Maybe you should go and talk to them, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that you find the right fit for you. So a lot of counselors will kind of redirect for students that they know don't have a major in their program, in their institution.
Okay. Now, how does a how may a first gen's experience differ from a legacy student's experience? And we know that first gens can be first gens because of economic reasons, or because of immigration status. Maybe that they've just been in the country for a while, or maybe they were born here and their parents were immigrants. There are many reasons, but how may their experience differ from legacy, so much so that we have now affinity groups and officers and all these different resources?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is you don't know what you don't know. So you don't necessarily know to ask about something that you never knew should have been a question to begin with. And so that's why I always say no question is off the table. If you want to know about the food, ask about the food. If you want to know about how soft the beds are, ask about how soft the beds are. All of those things should be in the process. You don't know what you don't know. I think the other big thing is around cost, and around the investment of higher education. So higher education is an investment. It's a 4-year one that students make that hopefully has an incredible return when you graduate, right? You get a great
Mhm.
job, and you're ready, you're set to go in the world. But the first thing that many parents ask me about and many families ask me about is, how much does your college cost, right? And of course, we want to talk about the cost. We also want to talk about what that means for the student, what's involved in that, and scholarshiping. So, as we talk about the cost, we always have the conversation about scholarships, the difference between a private institution and a public institution. Those things are different. And when you look at the costs and you assess them, they're going to look pretty different. Some institutions even get different funding from the state based on whether or not they're public or private. So, I think that those are the big ones. You never know. Ask every question. So get every question that you want answered, and just know that the sticker price for most institutions, I would say a majority of the institutions, the sticker price is not the price that you're going to be paying for college. Often there are scholarships, there are additional ways to support through FAFSA. If you've completed a FAFSA, it's October 11th, so it is open. If you're if you're a senior, you can begin completing the FAFSA. If you're ineligible to complete a FAFSA, there may be other methods by your institution by which you can find some additional financial support, right? So
Mhm.
merit-based scholarships. There's a fantastic organization called Scholarships A to Z, scholarships A-Z com, I think. And they have scholarships out there for DACA students and undocumented students who've identified that way, who are able to go in and say, okay, I'm going to apply for these opportunities to support myself to go through school. So there's a lot of different opportunities for students, but the big thing, you're probably not going to pay that big number at the top when you go to school. You're going to pay much less than that.
Okay. So I've learned a few things in speaking with you and researching for today's conversation that may be helpful to people. And they're random things, but Families should know that you can request interpreters when you're
Yes.
having these conversations so that you feel comfortable receiving and communicating with people. And you can request those in advance when you're talking and having meetings, but also when you arrive on campus
Hmm.
and you're going to family events and things like that, the university will supply those for you. So don't be shy about that. You should feel comfortable asking for things like that. And there are all kinds of little things that if you have these experiences, you can share. I know that a lot of first gen students sometimes feel as if they don't fit in or they feel alone because legacy students, you hear so and so's pledging a certain sorority or fraternity because their mother and their grandmother did and whatever, and you feel as if you don't belong because you don't have that lineage either at the school or in an organization or something like that. But you aren't alone because there are others, right?
Yes, oh my gosh, absolutely, and I wanna go back to your interpretation point, and any
Mhm.
access piece that a student needs, request it. We'll provide it for you, and it's not something that we're gonna put out on mass media or anything like that. Put the request in, and we'll take care of that for you. But yes, you are now the leader, right? You are now, you are part of the wildest dreams that happen for your family, for your, friends, for all of those people that want you to be successful. Never feel that you are less than because you have not been a part of an organization or whatever. You have the opportunity to build whatever community makes sense for you. When you get to an institution. And you may find even legacy students, yes, your parent or whomever might have been a part of an organization, but that might not be the right organization for you.
Mhm.
There are a lot of different opportunities for students to get engaged, and a lot of the organizations are aligned with mission and values and different things like that. And of course, you want to find the perfect fit for you. So you find that sense of belonging on your campus. You find your people, right? You find those people on campus that are there to support you. And sometimes it's the honor society of the program that you're involved in, and you might be the first one. My dad is, I'm a first generation student. My dad got his doctoral degree 2 years ago. And we used to joke that who would be the first person to get their doctoral degree. And he literally beat me by 2 years. So now our joke is I'll be the youngest one to get the doctoral degree. But there is something very beautiful about being first. There's something amazing about being first and saying, you know what, I am first. I am the one who is paving a new path for my family and providing new opportunities for my family and my friends to follow.
So, what should parents do if you see that your student doesn't quite feel like they fit in? They're having, and you don't know what it's like because you haven't had the experience. Where should you send them? On who's available on campus to speak with your student and help ease them into the transition? I know that the transition into college can be difficult for all types of students, but there's a specific strangeness involved when this is unusual and nobody around you has had this experience. And as much as you love your family, it's wonderful to have somebody to say, listen, I know what it's like to have to stay up 2 nights in a row.
Yes.
Your
Oh my
brain is
God.
not going to bleed. But,
Yes.
your parents may love you and tell you you need rest, but they haven't had the experience. So who should we
Right.
send them to? And maybe we do know we haven't had the experience and we want you to be with somebody who understands.
Yeah, and the community that you create on campus, sometimes it starts with your roommate. I always encourage students to live on campus because they have that person, right? Like you're commiserating together in your room, and probably both of you are staying up for 2 nights straight trying to study
Mhm.
for that test or whatever. We also have many institutions have student services, student affairs. So we run the gamut, right? Whatever it may be. Maybe you just need someone to talk to. Maybe you want professional counseling, right? Maybe you want somebody to really get in there. Something is working on you as you move through your time. and you want a professional counselor. Some people move on faith. Some people want to find that faith organization at their institution. So that faith is definitely those faith groups are important to find as well. So make sure that as you're going through, and the first thing that happens at most institutions at during welcome week and all of those sorts of things is an activities fair. Go around to all of those tables, say hello, find out what is happening in that group, in that organization, and say, oh, you know what? This might be a good group for me. This might be a good conversation for me to have. Parents also, I always encourage parents, if you can. Now, I know that we do a lot of things at very inopportune times for parents and families. So I totally understand. But if there's a parents' weekend, right? Go and visit your student, see who you can meet while you're there as well. Engage in that parent curriculum. Oftentimes you'll meet with the dean of students or different academic deans so that you can say, okay, I know that Josh Stern, for example, the dean of students here at Gwen and Mercy, is somebody that I can go to and say, I'm worried about my student for X, Y, or Z reason. I'm not sure what to do. What is your advice? Who should I be sending them to? How can I encourage them to go to X, Y, or Z person? There's a lot of different strategies around that. And I also think stick with your admissions counselor. We're always here to help you. So we oftentimes have worked with families for 2 years, maybe 3 years, depending on when they started looking at an institution as sophomores or as juniors. But come back around to us. We're always happy to say, oh, have you talked to your coach? Have you connected with your professor? Does your professor have office hours? We're often trying to be that that connector as well, that sort of conduit for on campus.
Oh, great. I love that. So you can go to whomever you want if there isn't a designated department for that or office. And I'll add that you can start your own. If there isn't you can start a Facebook group for first gen families and invite others to join because they may have information that you need, but remind them that the group is for first gen families. So you can take that initiative. What other resources? I know you sent us some. What other resources are available?
Yeah, so there are some really great books for families. One is on the admissions process. So it's called Who Gets In and Why. And it digs in a little bit deeper to see, what is this process? What is this sort of this cloak and dagger sort of situation that happens? I submit my application and then I just wait. What happens while I'm waiting? What is everybody doing? So Who Gets In and Why is a really great book for parents and for families to read together to just kind of work through that process. It demystifies it a little bit. I also have had a really great time. Haven't had a chance to read it, but it's on my bookshelf to read How Black Students Getting into Higher Education by Tim Fields, just to really discuss the opportunities that the differences in students who are navigating college culture, college going culture, the positioning of the historically Black colleges and universities within the community building. There are so many opportunities for students to find that community. And sometimes it's within a college, it's within a religious institution that meets with your religious affinity, or it is a historically Black institution, or an institution that supports Indigenous students, or an institution that supports Latinx students. There's so many different opportunities for you to find a place or a predominantly white institution, if that's what you're looking for, and the diversity that exists there. So there's so many different opportunities for students to engage. I always try to also use language around the search process. So when I talk about Gwen and Mercy, for example, you'll hear me say small, private, Catholic, suburban. Those are all Googleable terms. So when you're looking for an institution, if you came to Gwinnett and you were like, oh my gosh, this is it. I really like this size. I'm really a big fan of the location. Okay, let's look at small, suburban, Catholic institutions. You can search on that. We want to make sure that you find the right fit for you. And oftentimes you find it in a big book of college names, and you find it on, well, that's where I found it. Google is more reasonable now. More people are getting on Google and saying, I'm looking for a research institution, or I'm looking for a small institution, or I'm looking for an all women's institution or a Catholic university, whatever the case is. There's so many different opportunities. And there are articles out there. I know I just worked on one about how administrators can support first generation students. So know that there is a lot of intention that's going into supporting you and your family and taking care of you through this process and trying to anticipate your needs. But we get better when you tell us. So anytime you start to see somebody fumble or you're like, well, that was interesting, not quite sure about that, tell us. We want that feedback. We want to be better for you. We want to be sure that we're taking care of you and your families and everyone who comes after you.
I'm going to assume that that is why we now have the affinity groups and whatnot and the different offices at school, because people in previous generations said, you know what, this would have been better for me had I had X, Y, or Z. You pointed out something very important, that diversity is not just in the student body, it's in the resources available to them and the schools, that there are many types of schools, especially if you're applying in the USA. There are many types of schools, and a lot of first gen families may not understand the plethora of what's available to you. So really just get your hands on as much information if you can. There are online tours that you can take, because you may not be able to visit all the schools out there that seem interesting.
There are also sometimes fly-in programs. So you may find an institution that you thought looked really great, and they may have an opportunity that will support you and your family coming in up to a certain dollar amount, or they might take care of your travel or your hotel stay. Look for those weekends. Look for those ways that you can engage. And I always encourage students to scaffold those experiences. So when you go to a general open house, for example, most institutions have a very general, here's our information, here's a little bit about what we're about, here's a little bit about your program perhaps, and then look at, is there a specialty day for my program? I want to learn more about it. Is there a shadow opportunity for me to go with a student who's in my program around for a day and sit in classes with them and engage in their activities that they engage in? Is there an opportunity for me to stay overnight? Can I do an overnight stay? Is that something that's of interest to me or my family? Now, not every family is going to be interested in that. So I absolutely understand that opportunity as well. But then look out for those accepted student days, those enrolled student days that are really, those last opportunities for you to really say, yep, this is it. This is where I want to be. Or, you know what? I still have some questions that I need to get answered. We know you're going to have questions throughout this whole process. So we try to do our best to supply lots of different events for lots of different students and really answer those questions throughout the process.
Okay. So what I've heard from you and learned is that we have to keep asking, because there may be an overnight stay that is sponsored by the school for first gen families. You may fit into one of those, but there's so much information out there that you are not going to be able to remember what happens at which school at which time. So ask, find somebody to ask.
That's exactly right. And it can be your admissions counselor. It can be your friend who went there. It can be, of somebody that you met on the day. We've had so many people who have come to an accepted student day, for example, and then they've said, I met my roommate at accepted student day. Like, oh my gosh. Wow. Okay, good. Perfect. That's what it's there for. So lots of great ways to find other people to ask questions to. Ask students. The student who's giving your campus tour, ask them about student life on campus, right? How do they see student life? What are things that they're involved in? Might those things be things that you're interested in?
We are at the close of our time together, but I want to ask this question I try to ask everybody. If there's one thing that parents who are raising teens and tweens, of first generation college interested teens and tweens, what should they know if there's only one thing they take away?
You're not alone. Okay. We're here to take care of you. We're here to support you. We're here to make sure that this process is smooth for you. So I would tell my parents that if it was up to me.
And what one thing should we tell families of legacy students when they're interacting with first-gen students?
Yeah. Don't forget your privilege. Remember that you may have the knowledge that the student that's next to you would really love to have. So don't be ashamed to bring them in and say, "Hey, did you know this thing is happening? Did you know that there's this opportunity?" Um, that it gets so competitive in college, the college admissions process, that sometimes we forget that we're a part of a big group of people who are going to college. So just be aware and share that knowledge if you have any.
Wonderful. Thank you. I like both of those. You're not alone, and share. I love both of those. Thank you for joining us, Aimee. I really appreciate this. This is our first discussion on this, but it definitely won't be our last. It's an important one. So
Yes,
thank you.
thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody who spent time with us today. I want to remind you that tomorrow on Wednesday, we are starting a new series of Ask the Experts. It's on middle school, I think, for the next 3 Wednesdays. And what's really cool about this is it's a quick conversation. I think the conversations cannot be longer than 10 minutes. So it won't be like these Tuesdays with Kamira, which are 30 minutes, give or under or over, but it's quick, a real micro topic with an expert. Sometimes the questions come from our parent group or some other way that a parent has asked us a question, and we're finding experts to answer your questions on Wednesday. So join us on Wednesday. I believe it is 10:30, but I may be wrong. If I'm wrong, Jessica is going to put it in the comment section and correct me. And then on Thursday, we'll have the Inside Scoop with Sue again, and there'll be another dynamic conversation. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.